Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up to become a member of the Shannons Club. Kenworth Trucks Australia and Pace Farm Eggs.
G'day, I'm Fletch and welcome to the show. This car here is going to be my office of choice for most of the episode. It's 2025 and Ford has proudly been in Australia for 100 years. But where did it all start? You're about to see some early Ford beginnings in this week's episode of Classic Restos on the Road. Welcome back. It's 2025 and Ford here in Australia has a legacy of 100 years. It's an incredible milestone to say the least. As you know, Ford is one of the big three in the US, and from around the turn of the last century there were around 2,500 vehicle manufacturers in the United States alone. Just think about that for a moment. 2,500. That's 2,500 manufacturers that needed real estate, they needed buildings, they needed staff, they needed designers, engineers, they needed a plant. Some of these manufacturers built 3 cars, some of them built 50 cars. It's just amazing the amount that have come and gone. And the big three, well, of course, General Motors, Ford and Chrysler are the 3 big ones that we know out of the United States, American homegrown companies. In 2023, the Ford Motor Company in the United States of America turned over to the likes of around $190 billion. The Ford Australia component of that around the $5 billion mark. Now, rather than going through 100 years of a Ford timeline here in Australia on today's show, which, well, no doubt deserves massive recognition, I'd like to approach this from a different angle. 100 years of Ford in this country is one thing, but where did it all begin? Well, the Ford Motor Company's first purpose-built building was the Piquette Plant in Detroit, and that was built in 1904. Before that, Ford produced cars in a rented factory in Mack Avenue in Detroit. You may not know, but the Model T was not Henry's first car or the first model. The Piquette Avenue plant was also responsible for building models B, C, F, K, N, R, and S. And these all happened before the Model T. So Mr. Ford had a good life out of the Piquette plant from 1904 to 1910, a full 6 years of good production out of there. But at that point, he was left with no option but to expand and purchase the 60-acre facility at Highland Park, which is around about a 10-minute drive today from the Piquette plant. This is where the moving assembly line first started, and by October of 1913, production of the Model Ts at the plant had gone from hundreds a day to thousands a day. You know, it took around 12 and a half hours to build a Model T Ford at the Piquette plant, and this time was reduced to 1.5 hours. Just think about that for a moment. 12 and a half hours to 1.5. Consider that now as a time ratio. Mr. Ford was left with no option but to move from the Ford Piquette plant over to Highland Park. Now, this was where the first assembly line for Ford started happening. So the Model Ts at Piquette plant weren't on the assembly line there. They were all lined up and still put together by hand. It wasn't until the move to Highland Park before the Model Ts began being assembled on that moving assembly line. was incredible times. Ford was making so much money. In 1914, Mr. Ford spent $10 million of profits and gave that money back to the workers. This was via the new $5 per day pay packet, which in 1914 was an astronomical amount of money each day. It attracted like some 10,000 people, some from other countries, and they all gathered around outside the Ford employment office there, wanting work in the factory. Now, from the Ford Australia perspective, the Model T arrived here in Australia around 1908, and they were sent from the Piquette Plant, and they came out to Australia in a kit, and the dealerships used to knock the kit up. Just put that into today's perspective as well. Get your dealership to, knock your car up for you, build your car for you. Now, if you haven't seen the original Ford Piquette Plant in Detroit, here's some of it.
How you doing, Tom?
Oh, very good, Fletch. Nice to see you.
Yeah, hey, thanks for coming in for this.
Happy to do it. Glad to be here.
I think that there's no better way to start than on the second floor, right outside Henry Ford's office. I mean, it's quite surreal, all this, to think that many years ago, over 100 years ago, the great man himself was sitting right there.
You couldn't be more correct. It is amazing. And people come here and they are really impressed with this experience. The room has been reconstructed to its original 1907 appearance. We like to say the only thing that is missing is Henry Ford himself.
So what can you tell us about Henry Ford's office, and how did he conduct business? What did he do each day?
Well, each day he'd come in here. I'll tell you what, Henry didn't spend a lot of time in this office. He'd rather be out on the floor helping his men. If we look at his desk, we see that it's kind of a messy desk. Henry didn't attend to details as much as he should, and his son Edsel would come up here at age 12 and take the bills off of Daddy's desk and take them down to the finance department to be paid.
Tom, we just passed through the big green doors. We're still on level 2. What used to happen in this section?
In this section, what Henry did is they manufactured the cars not via an assembly line. It was by something called station assembly. And what he did, as a rule, almost always 3 different models were made. They made the heaviest cars on the first floor and the lighter cars on the top floors.
So the traditional production line, as we know it, happened after the Piquette building, didn't it?
That is correct, and that is a misconception. A lot of people believe that the assembly line was here, but indeed it was Highland Park, the next factory, 4 miles north of here. Just over your shoulder, we have various examples of the cars that were built here, beginning with Henry's Model A car and ending with the T. On the right-hand side, those are all the early Ford products. On the left-hand side, we have what we call Milwaukee Junction vehicles, which are vehicles competitive car manufacturers built in this district.
Tom, give us an idea, how many Model Ts, we'll pick on the T because it's just so famous, in its highlight before moving to the larger plant, how many Model Ts a day used to roll out of here?
It's very interesting that you asked that particular question, because Henry starts here with a lower car count, but as time goes on, he's able to increase the production to a maximum of 101 cars in one day. So it's a record that he achieved, and it's well documented in many of the papers of the day. An astounding record for the time.
We've always had a few cars. They're all special. The T-Bird.
Oh, that's mine.
The Combi for when we want to get away. The XR8.
It's going to be a classic.
They're all insured with Shannons,
We've also got Shannon's home and contents cover.
which helps protect our automotive collectibles, tools and memorabilia in the home and garage. If you're motoring enthusiasts like us, it's got to be
Shannon's.
Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
In 2025, why not consider a tour of Detroit, Michigan, USA with Fletch? Detroit, it's the Motown City, the automotive epicenter. Each day is wow, wow, and more wow. Imagine experiencing where automotive history on a grand scale began. Stay in fine accommodation, taking in some of the best museums and private car collections on the planet. Book your exclusive 2025 Detroit tour with Fletch. Enquiries at DetroitClassicTours.com.
And of course, if you own a classic, it just has to be insured with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646? And becoming a member of the Shannons Club has never been easier. For more information on the Shannons Club and more, visit shannons.com.au. Welcome back. The history of Ford, it certainly goes down as a global industrial and manufacturing marvel, having put the world on wheels with the Model T. But what about other things? What about behind the scenes? What about the personal life of Mr. Henry and Clara Ford? Where did they live? Well, in 1915, the Henry Ford estate of Fairlane was built. Now, to my knowledge, the renovation even today has been going well over a decade. It's a very hard place to get into and visit, try and check it out. But due to some good contacts with tourism in Detroit, I had the absolute privilege a few years ago to feature inside the very home of Henry and Clara Ford. Have a look at this.
Here, a sense of eeriness surrounds you. It was here at his home in 1947 where Mr. Ford passed away, with wife Clara by his side. This incredible man had achieved so much. In February 1914, work began on what would be the couple's final home. Between 500 and 800 masons and woodcarvers worked year-round to complete the estate as quickly as possible. The Fords were basically being swamped by fame in busy Detroit. One attribution to Henry's fame, apart of course from his cars, was the introduced $5 per day for workers in January of 1914. A precedent set at the time, doubling wages overnight. This fantastic public relations move caused thousands of uninvited people from around the world to turn up at his last residence and at Ford, seeking desperate employment in the time. This generosity also made Mr. Ford a celebrity as well, and drove sales for the Ford car even higher. Seeking peace and in keeping with the Ford's love of nature, the residence was built with Ohio limestone to harmonise with the surrounding countryside. The grounds, designed by noted landscape architect Jens Jensen, were transformed from farmland into a natural, native landscape. Henry and Clara Ford built this 31,000 square foot Fairlane as their dream home on 1,300 acres, and it's just a couple of miles from where they were both born. At a time when Henry was skyrocketing to global fame after the success of Ford Motor Company and the Model T, Fairlane was indeed their sanctuary. It was their 15th and final home, where they enjoyed entertaining their grandchildren and many friends, including frequent visitor Thomas Edison. Fairlane was a house that is a unique blend of Midwestern prairie school and English country manor styles. It was also the name given to one of the most popular Ford cars ever built, the Fairlane, sold between 1955 and 1970 in America and between 1959 and 2007 in Australia. The estate is located along the Rouge River and included a hydroelectric powerhouse and dam, a greenhouse, a working farm built to scale for their grandchildren, an indoor pool, skating house, staff cottages, bowling alley, and a pony barn, as well as a private garage and laboratory for Henry. Mr. Ford was proud of his simple tastes and felt no need to flaunt his substantial wealth. The residence's total cost was not to exceed $250,000, as instructed by Mr. Ford to his builders. Despite this directive, at the time of completion, the building cost $1.8 million. The interior decorating alone was an additional $175,000, and the property development and landscaping adding another $370,000 to the final bill. By January 1916, the Fords were completely settled into their new home.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannons understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannons. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
Your story began in 1971. It's part of an endless tapestry that tells the story of our nation. It connects innovators to artisans, forests to houses, from the largest of operations to the smallest of outcomes. It's heritage. It's a legacy.
Welcome back. The episode with some unique Ford history going on. How are you, Peter?
Well, Fletch, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. I thought that it would be very befitting to have a Model T to round off today's episode. The model that put the world on wheels. Now, Peter's good enough to bring his truck along. Wow, it's an amazing restoration. It looks fantastic. What can you tell us about this particular truck, Pete?
Well, look, I purchased it in 2001. We did look at it earlier, and then we went back and finally picked it up. I was glad I did. We had a bit of a discussion, but anyway, it wasn't anything like it was, and we've just built it up from there. But there was a lot of things, or when I say a lot, quite a few little knick-knacks that were missing, and I've been to swap meets finding bits and pieces over the time. But it's been a joy to be able to do it and get it up and running.
It's amazing history. Without the original benchmark, the automotive industry wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for Mr. Ford back in those early days. Now, this truck, what year are we looking at, Peter?
1925.
Okay, 25. So the original Piquette Plant was in operation for around 14. Studebaker came in after that. A little telltale too, and the curator, Tom, over there at the Piquette Plant, told us that the models that left were found with a little wing, like a little line, where you see the Ford emblem there, little stamping on the top of the radiator tank. There's like a line either side of Ford representing two little wings, apparently, and they were the ones that left the Piquette Plant. So obviously this is 1925, so this is later on. This is a Highland Park car, so this would have been on the original assembly line had it been sold in America, but here in this country, sent out as a kit and then assembled here in Australia.
Yep. Yeah, I believe so. And then when they were assembled, you had basically all you purchased was the engine, the chassis, the wheels, and the firewall and the steering wheel. You then went to a coach builder or a cabinet maker to get your actual cab made and a tray made on the back to whatever, or a van, whatever you wanted to make it. So.
Okay, so we're talking a light truck here. How much difference between the I guess what would you call the Model T, a family sedan, or the base Model T? What differences are there between that and the truck in terms of engine and driveline, if any?
Yeah, look, the engine I believe is the same. It's a 22.5 horsepower, 4-cylinder. A little unique engine actually. It doesn't have a water pump, doesn't have an oil pump, no fuel pump, no dipstick. So you've sort of got a thermo siphon system with the heating. This one particularly has a 2-speed diff. With the trucks, they had a longer chassis, bigger chassis, longer chassis, and bigger wheels on the back end of it. But it's
essentially the same as the car.
Yeah, the same. The front end's all the same. So, it was really the gearbox or transmission, planetary transmissions, same with the 3 gears, 3 bands, I should say. You've got your high and low in one, you've got a reverse in the middle, and then your brake pedal, which actually all it does is compress slow the motor down. Rear wheel brakes, no front wheel brakes.
You can put them into reverse to slow them down too, can't you?
Yeah, you do. Some people say they use the reverse pedal to slow it down, because all you're doing is just slowing the motor down. That's all you're doing.
Interesting, Peter, when you talk of no water pump, the old hot air risers, hot water risers, and that causes the circulation, right?
Yep, yeah, it is, and it's called a thermal cycle system. So your water actually comes from the bottom of the radiator. On the other side, you've got your hose, your inlet coming up to your head, runs through your head, transfers back up into the radiator, cools as it comes back down through the radiator. You know, you've got your carburetor, updraft carburetor, your coil box on the back, which I'm still running the coils there for one little coil box for each spark plug. You've got your commutator down the front, where your little cam roller sits on that and rolls round for your spark, and your generator. Like, there's not a lot to it. The other side is really only just the water pump, not the water pump, the water hose and the actual coil box.
And incredible for what they were, for the places that they could go. High up off the ground, huge wheels, and they were incredibly agile, weren't they? They could go anywhere pretty well.
Oh yeah, a lot of clearance and very strong. Like they pull very steep. Like you'd have a fair load. It says it's a TT, which represents a 1 ton truck, but I think they'd probably put more than that on it over the years, and and the farmers and use it, and they'd have a fair load on it and pull it anyway.
You've got to remember too, these vehicles when they first came out was the first generation pretty well of people that drove, so they were off the horse and into a T. There are a lot of other models that Mr. Ford built, as we mentioned earlier in this episode, but it was the T that got the worldwide recognition. And Mr. Ford had a hard time too in the early days too. He went through a bankruptcy as well, I believe in the late 1800s, early 1900s as well. And I guess that can be a sign as well of a successful businessman, to experience the lows and then climb up and succeed. There are other significant models as well, but the T, that was the one. That was the model that put the world on wheels. And I think it was incredibly diverse of Ford to make a product that the average working person could afford. Hey, let's build a truck and we'll just extend the chassis rail. Yep. And pretty well just keep everything from front to the firewall same. It just makes sense to do that, doesn't it?
Oh, he was a very smart man, really, when you think about it. Like you say, he put it the revolution around there. He got it out there and worked it out. So very smart.
We get so used to the vehicles that we know today, but have a look at this. 1925. We look at the area where you drive the vehicle. 3 pedals on the floor, gear stick over on the right, handbrake lever here, which could pretty well trip you up getting out of the cabin if you weren't too careful, and the long tubular steering column. Now that's interesting because even into the 40s and 50s, cars, our family cars, had a long tube steering column coming into the cabin area. So this was early beginnings, but that's a long tube column there. Got the steering wheel up here in your chest almost while you're driving. But this is where it all began. These are the early platforms. If it wasn't for these platforms, we would not have the vehicles that we have today. Everything had to start somewhere. So Peter, tell us about the driveline. I looked underneath, interesting. We've got a concealed tail shaft with a worm drive sitting on top of the crown wheel at the diff there. That's interesting technology for the time.
Oh, unbelievable, really, when you think about it. It's a concealed torque tube with a solid rod that's it's about a foot longer than what the actual car's rod is, and comes into the tail shaft at the end. You have a uni joint at the back of your transmission to allow it to flex. It's on a ball system, and it runs back to the Ruxel diff, and you have a 2-speed diff in the back of it. So
Peter, I just want to thank you so much for bringing this amazing 1925 T-truck along to round off today's special episode, highlighting some early days of Ford and where it all began from Detroit, Michigan in the United States. I have so much admiration and respect for a vehicle such as this. It's almost like, it's like taking a senior person out of a nursing home for the morning, isn't it?
Yeah, great. Get them out and see the people smile and people to talk to and get out and about in it. It's great.
Well, Peter, it's a credit to you, and I just want to commend you on the restoration and how you've saved this Model T truck. I think that is marvellous, and I think the world of that. I love that. So well done on that count. And again, thank you very much, mate, for your time this morning.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure. Been a pleasure. Thank you.
So that's it for today's episode. A little bit of history about Ford in the early days where it all began. I hope you have enjoyed it. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch. Thanks for watching.
Classic Restos, proudly brought to you by Shannons. Sign up to become a member of the Shannons Club. Kenworth Trucks Australia and Pace Farm Eggs.